ahead of us. The first match of the day is blitzbullet versus burpcow, and they are beginning in a couple of minutes. Blitzbullet being the favorite in this match versus burpcow. This is a North American affair. Blitzbullet from the United States and burpcow from Canada. Let's have a quick look at the overall standings, and as you can see, blitzbullet is actually in the lead, but he has played a lot of matches already. And the match today is actually from the 13th and last round. So if we look a bit further down in the standings, we find Katask, who's only played, is it 3 matches? 2 matches? Yeah, 2 matches, and he is the favorite to take this. Maybe Opperwesen or Jan Lee can challenge him for the first spot. That earns the right to challenge the world champion Yasugi 99. Let's see if the players are ready to go. Yeah. The players are set, and as you can see, blitzbullet has a huge lead in their previous games, 8-1. Blitzbullet is white in the first game, and he plays the same opening over and over, it seems. He likes the kingside fianchetto in the d4, d5 opening. So the knight d2 is just to make sure that if white takes here, black takes on f3, white can take back with a knight. We saw in the previous match here that blitzbullet actually got some problems against Zixon in these lines, but probably blitzbullet has scrutinized those games and found some improvements. And my guess is that burpcow has not prepared thoroughly for this match. As a matter of fact, I think he's already in some trouble here. Because after c4, c5 might be coming. So he trades on f3 and picks up the c4 pawn. f6 makes the e6 pawn a bit loose, but yeah, and white tries to take advantage of the loose e6 pawn here. Not sure what the idea is after knight takes d5 though. Okay, so he just tries to blast the center open here. The queen is centralized in a safe spot, putting pressure on the c4 pawn and on d5. Black already had a couple of pawns, but white will take some material back here. One idea is to check on b5 with the bishop and pick up c4, or simply just take c4. Taking d5, opening the light squares here around the king is also an idea. Oh, he gives the queen. Just to keep his precious light square bishop in front of the king. Well, the bishops here, they are really dominating the game right now. Interesting compensation for white, who immediately goes to work here trying to probe for weaknesses around the black king. And this is a powerful knight. Look. The Kasparov square. Welcome all the viewers. All three of you. So white has a really strong attack here. Already threatening knight at e7. When black needs to sacrifice his queen to say aloud. There's a mating threat here on h6. Knight at h6 is mate. And probably you can pick up the rook. And then maybe pawn g7. So this forces the issue. Knight takes, and now the white knight landing on f5. And the black pieces are just piling up in burpcow's hand. He doesn't have the opportunity to place them on the board, which is a huge problem for him. Yeah, he just resigns. Spectacular, aggressive game there by blitzbullet. And we saw this against Zixon also. Blitzbullet choosing a rather unusual black setup. Allowing white to set up a nice center here. This knight is heading towards the king side, and I really like this move because when the knight lands on g6, you can chase it away with h5. And this is not a move you want to do here because the light squares will be permanently weak here on the king side. For instance, if black plays knight g6, e5 might be a problem when you can take on g6, creating some weaknesses. I'm saying might be a problem. I'm not sure it is. But bishop g5 is looking like a solid approach because you cannot chase it away. You put the pawn on h5 already, so g5 is a weak spot for black. And any time now the e5 pawn will be advancing here. So this is probably the best opportunity. And what to do with the queen? You cannot play f6 because the knight is hanging. And that knight wouldn't be hanging if the h-pawn was still at h7. Sorry. So the queen ended up in this awkward square, and the knight goes to work on the queen side that has been a bit weakened. It's difficult to protect c7, and b8 is not the best square for a bishop. This is really passive. So white has a clear advantage here. And you don't have to force the issue here as white. No, he just goes back. Maybe the knight will swing over to the king side. So a strong game by burpcow so far. And white doesn't need to worry about bishop taking here, because the queen is sitting really well in the center. The question is where to put the king, actually. Since you moved the h-pawn and the a3, and the a-pawn to a3, there isn't really a safe place to put the king. Probably you want to keep the knight on the board. If you play knight g3, maybe you can take on h5 and then take on g4. Just keep those bishops locked in on the queen side. I don't quite like that decision, taking on d6. That made this bishop a bit more alive. But the f3 pawn captured the knight on g4. And another passive pawn, a passive move by black here. Was just trying to stay alive here. But the black defense is actually quite coordinated. Now the bishops are covering a lot of useful squares. And these pawns are quite impressive. Hard to find a way through, and when you have a hard time finding your way through and you have a healthy space advantage as white has here, it's usually wise to simply switch to chess. White picks up some material here that was unavoidable. Now rook at d8 is a threat. So the knight covers d8. You have to admire blitzbullet though. He's a really tenacious defender. Trying to get rid of those annoying pawns. Looks like a wise decision. If you take here, maybe the king can move over to the queen side. And burpcow is really low on time now. Looks like blitzbullet is turning this game. And rook here, knight here, take here, and the knight is pinned. It's mate on c1 next move. Good defense by blitzbullet. Very impressive. Burpcow just didn't know how to finish him. So this is something that Zixon tried also. An early c5 just to trade off a pawn and take advantage of the possible weaknesses here on the queen side. So Zixon chose to rush the h-pawn forward and then quickly sacrifice on h3. Trade a pawn here and then just put it on g4 and then run the h-pawn down the board. Looks like blitzbullet has prepared something for that. So instead of leaving the knight as a target on f3, he prefers to trade it here on d4. And the queen side is actually a bit weak here. One move to look out for is pawn at h6, putting pressure on the b7 pawn, taking advantage of the pin. Wow. Cold-blooded defense here by blitzbullet. So the king side looks perfectly safe again. Probably knight f3. Yeah. Letting the bishop loose. That bishop is passively placed behind the pawns, and white avoids any possible problems with the bishop threatening the queen here. These guys are just pointing in the wrong direction, I think. So even if black will maybe win a piece here, white is so active. White has much more piece activity, better developed. And did black just leave a piece on prise here? So look out for queen h2 mate. But maybe you just play knight e5, okay, bishop f4. White would really want to trade this bishop that keeps f8 under control. And if black takes on f4, maybe queen at f8 is strong. Little in-between move. So, has burpcow found something? Well, if you place a rook here, maybe he thought that white would need to place his queen here, but he doesn't. He can move the bishop to f1. Although even queen at f1 looks safe enough. Bit of calculation there by white. Because if you play bishop takes here, you can just pick up the rook, and if black takes on a1, there's a mating attack here, queen f8. Yeah, nothing for black to do there. And another convincing win by blitzbullet. In the previous white game for burpcow, he got a really good position. I don't think he minds repeating that line. We see the h4 coming when the knight is trying to shift towards the king side. And once again, the g5 square is good for the dark squared bishop. So the black queen leaves the potential pin here. Remember that last time it ended up in a really awkward square here on f8. So now if white plays e5, you can just move the knight. And the white center looks very impressive, but has he run out of moves now? How do you continue here? Well, it seems like e5 is the key move here. Somewhere you just need to prepare it. White is shifting gears here, maybe wanting to put the knight here on g5, but this is a much more active square than putting it on f7. So always look for the more aggressive defensive move. So by castling queenside, white provides black with a target. So black is probably looking to run the b pawn up the board and open some squares around the white king. Nice move, putting pressure here on f5 and g6. Hi there, Zaraza. So the queen protects g6, but e6 is hanging, although f2 is hanging also. So I would expect him to take with the rook here. Yeah, crazy house. The position looks quite unclear here. Let's say if you take on e6, also e5 is hanging when you have a fork on the queen and the knight. And blitzbullet putting so much pressure on the clock here. I think black should just keep on going forward. Take on c7. Try to make use of those weak light squares. Yeah, he has the same idea here, but this was not as well executed, I think, because the knight here actually protects some vital light squares, was better to leave it here on g4, I think. And this looks good now for white, doesn't it? You cannot take because of knight g5 and it's mate on h7 with the rook. And if you go here, what happens then? Well, you need to go to the corner. And rook g8 doesn't look so good, does it? Just take on g8. Black has his mating attack here. Came really quickly. Black is just threatening to take b2. And then it's all over. You have knight at c4. Okay, so white probably thinking that he had a perpetual here, but the knight is covering f7, so it's 4-0 blitzbullet. And judging by the first games here, blitzbullet has a huge, I'll just say, he's like green kryptonite for burpcow, I think. Burpcow just can't find a way through blitzbullet's armor. So the a6 move, protecting this bishop from a knight b5 knight lift. White clearing the way for a e4 pawn advance. And surely this is a good opportunity. White looking a bit better here. Although white has ideas like taking here on g3 and then taking on d4. The f5 move protects the h7 pawn. And maybe you could switch the move order. Yeah, take d4 here first. I wonder if white had taken here, do you take on g3 maybe? So this covers e2, attacks e6, and white is ready to pick up the knight perhaps. I wonder if he's looking at queen takes g7 here. I guess it wasn't enough. So maybe bishop at d5, trying to trade off this vital piece. But we've seen this before. Let's say bishop d5, maybe white will just take with the queen. So probably queen e2 hitting e6. And now white has the time to put his pawn on h6. Pretty soon. And this looks dangerous. It's really tempting to just take g7. Yeah, blitzbullet goes for it. Hi there, Sarah Shingla something. We're watching a game here, a candidates game, so sorry, you cannot challenge me at the moment. So what does white need here? He needs obviously a heavy for h8. That would be nice. And I don't think black can leave the rook at f8 because maybe take here, and if the queen takes, you even have rook at h8. Yeah, rook h8, and everything comes with check here. King takes, pawn g7, take, king takes, and the king is out in the open. Yeah, and he actually found a mate here, queen f8, and queen takes e8. Cute little finish there by blitzbullet, and halfway through this match, it's 5-0 blitzbullet. And blitzbullet repeats this line. And come on now, burpcow. You know h4 is good. So he tries a slightly different approach here. In the previous games he played bishop g5. Maybe white can simply play f3 here, kicking the knight. Where is it going? The reason I would like to play f3 is not only because it kicks the knight, but also closes the long diagonal. Obviously you have some weaknesses here around the white king, but black doesn't have any pieces in hand. So, a not so subtle threat here. Queen takes f7 mate. And black doesn't mind trading queens here. Actually, if white takes here, black takes back. I think that black is in great shape. So, is this annoying? Hitting the pawn here on c7. If rook c8, a7 is hanging. So a quick trade here on f3, and now the question is, how dangerous is taking here? Well, white decides it loses a piece, I suppose, but clearly taking on c7 would have been critical. And taking on c7 looks critical once again. Does black really have any threats here? I was wondering, why don't you just take the rook? So knight b5 looks sensible. There's one little trick you have to be careful about here. If black gets the opportunity, he can play knight at f3, and after a couple of trades you cannot go to d1 because of queen takes f1, and there's a heavy landing on e1 delivering mate. So the black king is being pushed around, but it sure looks like he can reach some safety here. This knight is still covering g6. And remember that threat. Maybe simply pawn a2 here. Yeah, pawn a2. Threatening to queen. That's a tricky move. Possibly forcing the white king back into the center, but it won't be comfortable there. Looks like blitzbullet has this one also. Because if you need to place the queen in the corner, it's just lost. For instance, knight f3, and white has nothing. So he actually allows black to queen that, and probably knight here, just pick up the h4 bishop, and the knight is once again covering g6. Not sure why they didn't pick up the bishop, but because then you would threaten queen f3, but never mind. Burpcow overstepping the time limit, and it's 6-0. And this is the thing I notice about Burpcow. He's a sort of a hit or miss player. When he's in the zone, he's dangerous to anybody out there. So instead of going for the early c5, he chooses a calmer setup for black. Not even going to d6, and this looks a bit passive. blitzbullet knows just what to do here. So quickly attacking the black king side. And if pawn g7, you simply take. So white probably hoping to check here with the knight. And this bishop covers here, but now f6 is weak. So white looking to take the knight on f6 and then place it on f6. Probably pawn h6 now. with the same idea to take on d4. Although black looks quite okay here. So rook e1 makes sense, moving out of possible pawn fork here on e2. So let's say black takes here, white takes, queen takes, you have bishop e5. Threatening mate on h8, so black doesn't have the time to take the queen. Finally, burpcow has a position here. About equal time. Threatening to take f3. And blitzbullet actually has some problems here. You should probably just take f2 here. Get your attack started. Now is the time. Just bring that white king out on the board. Yeah, take f2. This looks killing. Black doesn't have enough maybe to finish him off at the right away, but he can make a slow move at some point, because white doesn't have a mate. So hoping to bring the rook into action here. And if white goes back, black can probably play something like pawn d5. What about going in this direction? Is it mate then? So white going for a touchdown. Looks like it's the white king is caught in a mating net, but after rook b6 you have king d7. Courageous defense here by blitzbullet. No, you cannot place pawns on the first rank or the last rank. So this queen might be thinking of going to a4 in the next move. But does white have the right coordination here? Now is probably the time to make a slow move, I suppose. Maybe you take on c3. So he prefers to take on f5 instead. While trying to launch some sort of counterattack. And what if white takes here? Does black have mate here? Look, the king is going to the corner. Yeah, white is safe. All of a sudden, white is safe. What a game. And mate next move on g8. Wow. Blitzbullet. I love that one. And burpcow doesn't play a3 this game, and now blitzbullet chooses to send his knight in the other direction, and I'm sure he's quite happy here. He got a bishop he could put outside the pawn chain and quickly pin the knight on f3. Maybe knight c2. Was there something wrong with knight c2? Well, maybe bishop e3. This was a bit peculiar, I think, but oh well. And of course, black does not want to take on d5 and open the e file here. He will just play with his light pieces. And maybe even take on f2. Let's say bishop takes f2, queen takes, and knight g4. And if white takes here, black can open the h file. Although now he can play d4, inviting e5, but then d5 is hanging. And white does not want to play knight bishop g3 because black only takes. So white inviting bishop f4, trying to get at least a draw here. So I don't think blitzbullet wants a draw here, but this makes burpcow think if he wants a draw. So I think this is just to make burpcow's time tick. And also it's a bit provocative, and burpcow actually decides he's better. I'm not sure he's right, but burpcow deviating here doesn't want the draw, and blitzbullet quickly picking up that glove that burpcow threw at him, and this just looks good for black, I think. So you could take g5, but this is more aggressive. You have knight f4, check, picking up the queen on e2. And once you get the queen, you have knight g4, and it's almost mate. And you still have knight g4. Take here, what will need to get rid of this knight. You don't have time to take on e2, probably because of knight g4. Okay, so he closes the h file. But now maybe you can take on c3. And the same problem, you can put the knight on g4 then. Taking c3 looks very natural. Oh, he goes for knight g4 anyway. Maybe taking c3 was better, but this looks interesting enough. White having a lot of pieces pointing in the direction of the white king. Did I say white? I mean black is having pieces pointing in the direction of the white king. And the g4 bishop is hanging. And you probably just take, and now rook takes h3 is a huge problem. It's still a huge problem. And this is just winning. So knight here and mate the next move, either on g2 or h2. And it's 8-0. And by now I think blitzbullet is inside of burpcow's head. Burpcow has lost all his confidence. They're repeating the same line as before, where actually Burpcow got a position where he could at least do something. But here white didn't play e4. Let's see. Okay, this is slightly different. And white playing the standard pawn h6 just to open the black position. It just looks like white is quicker here. Taking on f7 might be an idea, because if black takes back with the queen, you have knight h6, and if you take with the king, well, if you take with the king is going in the wrong direction. So maybe knight takes f7. Now you don't have that idea anymore. But this is slow. This is really slow. Obviously you're looking for a pawn g7. But if you let's toy with the idea of pawn g7, you could even take with the queen, and when the knight takes back, it's hard to get to the black king. It takes a while. This is a nice defense, covering g7, hitting e5. And the e2 pawn is a problem here, because if you take here, black can place a pawn on e2. This is looking good for black, I think. Hi there, okay. Yeah, blitzbullet has just outplayed Burpcow, I think. He got him right where he wants him. Some really, really nice games. And especially one fantastic touchdown run with the white king where he defended, going through a minefield with the king. So blitzbullet thinking a lot here, and he clearly has some problems. And maybe just knight takes e2 and take on f4. You have weakened f3 then. This is an active defense. And still, white is having problem with the e-pawn. He cannot take on d3. Oh, thank you so much, Flourish. Flourish. How do you say it even? So will burpcow finally win a game here? It sure looks like that. Some desperate defensive measures here by blitzbullet, and now he goes for the knight takes f7 idea. He found it finally. He should have played it much earlier. I think h8 is covered by the bishop, which is important. And I'm thinking maybe black has a forced mate here. Does he? Almost. Yeah, let's say you take here with a knight, pawn takes, rook h2. Looks winning for black. Yeah, he finds it. So this is all over now. And just don't remember to waste the queen on h4. You need the queen to deliver mate. Yeah, he has enough material for sure. And if you put the queen here on g3, the king will be cut off. So queen here, you could pick up the bishop if you want to. And queen c5 is mate. Finally, burpcow got a win. A nice one also. Nice little finish. So blitzbullet picking another opening for the last game. No, just keep commenting. I love comments. I should shut up myself sometimes. So this was a bit of improvisation by blitzbullet. What to do now? It's an impressive little knight here, but white gets the b file. Yeah, you should probably keep this bishop. So keep the bishop, castle short. And black is anticipating the short castling. I was thinking maybe black would want to keep this diagonal open, but this knight is trapped. Maybe not a huge problem, because if white takes, black can take back. Getting some light square compensation. White playing very sensibly here. These bishops pointing to the black king side. And this queen is tied to the defense of the b7 pawn. Threatening c3, but probably hoping to take d4 at some point. White is preparing an assault here on the d4 pawn, and also now e5 is hanging because the d4 pawn is pinned. Well, I had this discussion when I played Bughouse many years ago, and definitely bishops are more versatile than knights. They are more of an all-round piece, good at both attacking and defending. So nobody puts baby in the corner, but this baby here ended up in the corner, and actually it's doing quite fine here on the long diagonal. I don't mind anyone commenting. I'm just happy to get a few matches to comment on my own. So yeah, you probably take c5, and if you take here, you take with check first and then you take back. I would love to see like a studio set up with 3-4 commentators. Maybe Yasser can be persuaded to do a bit of commenting. So probably bishop here. Oh, you take f5 first, of course. And black is still alive here. But this looks strong, yeah. Threatening the king, and now you pick up b7, and the black defenses are overrun. For instance, rook b8, you can even take on b8 and then place the rook on c8, picking up the knight. So probably pawn. And of course this is just over. It's just a matter of finding the killer moves. This looks good. The queen is moving in from behind, threatening mate in 1. And indeed, that's a great finish. I feel like I remember once when Sweden played the Soviet Union in ice hockey, and the Soviet Union were leading by 9-0 after the 2 first periods, and Sweden actually won the last period by 2-0, and the commentators were so happy. And I hope Burpcow is feeling happy now, winning the last 2 games at least. And he didn't get completely demolished. Thank you so much for watching, and we will have some interesting games later tonight. Don't miss Burpcow again versus Clearcast. That will be an interesting match. And finally 264 Brock against Dog Answer. Thanks for watching and see you. Bye bye.